Hello and welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Casey Elkins, co-founder and managing partner at Elevated Financial Management. I'm joined as always by my friend, father-in-law, and business partner, Mark Stimpson. Maybe you've seen the three of us in the past with a different host. Today it's just me and Mark, and we are really excited to be back with our audience today. We're talking about things that are always top of mind for retirees. The topic of our discussion today is not only how expensive retirement is, but specifically caregiving or long-term care in retirement. Before we jump into it, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Case. It's always good to be with my son-in-law. I take such good care of my daughter, and it's a pleasure to be working with you. And we're in the office together, but we also get to do some traveling. We get to come down and shoot our show, and it really is a privilege to be able to work with you. You bring so much to our firm. The one thing I will say, I think the viewers are going to enjoy our show today. What we're going to talk about is something near and dear to me because I watched it devastate my grandparents on my dad's side when my grandfather got Alzheimer's. So again, you don't want to stick your head in the sand about this subject if you're watching today, because if you do, it can be devastating. In fact, we talk about the one thing that could really derail a wonderful plan. It would be long-term care, right? And not having a plan or not wanting to talk about it because the costs are devastating today, and it's not going to be covered by Medicare. Now, you may get up to 100 days, but that's a little, as we know, a little over 3 months. And with cost now up in our area in Seattle, you could be looking at $15,000 a month, right? And that's $180,000 a year for one person. Where is that money going to come from? Do you have a plan to help address that so that the rest of what could be decades for the well spouse to possibly live in a way that was never planned for because you didn't want to talk about this or make a plan as to how we could cover it.
Yeah, it is something that has to be planned for. Yeah. And before we actually get into it, I just want to share something with our audience, something that Mark and I are very proud of. It's this book right here, Break the Glass. This is something that we actually talk about long-term care in this book. We talk about, it's really a shortened version of each and every show that we do, all the education that we try to put out in the Seattle area, because these are the questions that people are asking when they come into our office, when they're trying to plan for their retirement. And we see these concerns come up each and every day. And so we've got this book, Break the Glass. You see the website there. You can go to breaktheglassbook.com. We'll be happy to share it with you. And it's a great introduction into retirement planning and how to best go about tackling Social Security, long-term care, creating income that you can't outlive, how to deal with market risk, all those concerns that are swirling around in retirees' minds. But specifically today, we want to get into long-term care. And you know what? We're always looking for news articles and things that we can bring not only to our audience, but even just to help keep ourselves informed and educated as to what's going on in the world and what is at top of minds for retirees. And so this one really caught our eye. The title of the article, Caregiving has become so expensive, it's financially devastating to most families. Yeah. And we really see that to be the case. I mean, Mark, you just shared some staggering numbers, $180,000 potentially a year. And you know what? That's in the Seattle area. And we've had folks tell us, well, we're going to move out of state. We're going to be in an area that care isn't quite as expensive. And that is the case for some folks. That absolutely is the truth. But you know what? We had somebody come into our office, and their folks were in a facility in North Dakota. Yep. And do you remember how much it was for their care?
Yeah. $14,000 a month.
$14,000 a month.
See, it wasn't that much difference. And that's the point of what Casey's bringing out to our viewers is you need to have a plan for this. I'm in the business basically because this happened to my grandfather. And we were able to keep the big farm back in Iowa, but it was devastating to them. He got Alzheimer's and didn't go into a facility till he was almost 92 years old, and he lived another 5 years. So again, this is something that everyone viewing or hears our radio show needs to be thinking about, because we tend to not want to talk about it. Even as advisors, we tend to kick the can down there, don't want to mention it. Nobody wants to think about their own mortality or their spouse's mortality, right? But the one thing I do believe, I have 3 very loving children, and I don't want that burden of taking care of Lori and I to fall on them. And we're going to talk about why that can be devastating to their own financial future, because they may have to take off of work, and this could be years we're talking about of caring for someone that needs help with just what we call the ADLs, the activities of daily living: bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, taking your medicine, just help with basic necessities that are needed each and every day. And I just don't want my kids to have to deal with that. Sure, they're going to be able to help, but I don't want them to have to uproot possibly their families. Maybe they don't live close. I don't want them having to be in the house with us 24/7. So again, I hope if you're watching, you think about this, because caregiving is, until you do it, it's kind of like someone that says, I know what it's like to be a parent, right? Until you're an actual parent, no, you don't. You think you might, but it's totally different when the reality sets in, right? Now, you don't have any kids.
That's right.
Lori and I are very disappointed about that. But, the bottom line is, you've got to have a plan for this, because it's going to the numbers are staggering, that between 70 and 75% of us are going to need some form of long-term care before we pass away. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to go to Vegas if 7 out of 10 chances I'm going to lose. I'm probably not going to play that game, right? I think if we were stepping up to a craps table or a poker table and we knew we were going to lose 7 out of 10 hands or dice throws, you're probably not going to play that game. And why do it in reality with our life savings and with the welfare of our spouse or our children? It's just not worth the gamble.
I'll just say, you went on record as saying you don't want your kids to have to take care of you in your later years. Being married to your daughter, I 100% appreciate that. But I think it's interesting, because the article does bring something out. It says 59 million Americans provide 49.5 billion hours a year of unpaid family labor, worth over $1 trillion, which obviously quickly erodes caregivers' own careers, savings, and retirement. So this is a compounding issue, where not only is it that you have maybe the oldest generation that needs that care and potentially is not financially able to deal with it, right? And so family is coming in to help, which is a wonderful thing, right? If you are a caregiver at home, that is an amazing thing that you're doing to take care of a family member, whoever it may be. But the concern that we have is now it's this cascading effect, where potentially you're not able to earn the income that you should be earning as you're approaching your own retirement. Or perhaps that care is actually costing you money out of your retirement. And oftentimes we see this kind of as a sandwich, right? Where the older generation needs that care. And so the children are helping to provide that care while still at the same time helping to raise their own children. Or perhaps they have some children that are maybe a little late leaving the nest. And so that's a financial burden on mom and dad, while mom and dad are taking care of their own parents. And so, this is something that we see a lot. And the truth of it is, Mark, it's probably more pronounced in Seattle than other parts of the country, because the cost of care is expensive, the cost of housing is expensive. Everything in Seattle is an expensive endeavor. And so we fight this each and every day when we put together a retirement plan. And so, for our audience, we'd love to offer you the opportunity to get a written financial plan, a plan that helps to account for that long-term care. What does that future look like for you? What can actually be done to help offset the future cost of long-term care? You see the number on the screen, 844-342-7142. We will put together a written financial plan. It's completely complimentary. You leave your checkbook at home. We'll talk about taxes, the risk that you're taking, and everything will be custom tailored to your individual situation. And it's a perfect time for you to ask any and every question that you have about what the retirement future looks like for you. 844-342-7142. Again, we're talking about long-term care here on Elevate Your Wealth. Don't change the channel. Come right back. We have more to share.
Call 844-342-7142 right now for your own written financial plan. Having a clear path to retirement is more than just your savings. This review will include a complete risk analysis on your portfolio, a deep dive fee X-ray to determine how much you are and could be paying on those investments, a tax reduction report, and healthcare and legacy planning for you and your estate. To begin your retirement readiness review, call Casey, Mark, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your appointment right away. Whether your retirement is coming soon or you want to be certain you can stay retired, the written financial plan will help guide you through your retirement planning journey. Call Mark, Casey, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your meeting today.
Is going to get worse from here. This is the biggest monthly decline in 10 years. People's 401ks today.
Well, my investments are tanking. My retirement isn't going as planned. I can't believe I let my kid talk me into buying crypto. I mean, what is that anyway?
This was the fourth worst contraction in history.
So how are you two doing?
Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. Call now for your own complimentary portfolio review and written financial plan. Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Casey Elkins. We're talking about long-term care and not only the cost of it, but more specifically, the potential impact that it can have on your retirement. Mark and I are always working to find articles that we can bring to you, our audience, that we can share with folks in our office. And we're talking about a couple specifically today, again, on the topic of long-term care. And so, Mark, here's a quote from the article that I think is really interesting. It says that the U.S. is effectively penalizing aging.
Yeah.
Man, what a devastating statement. Could you elaborate on what that really means?
Yeah, see, and this is a really important point. We were talking about our children and possibly they being the ones to care for us. It says, by maintaining a system that depends on unpaid family caregiving and public support, but to get public support in our state, we're a spend-down state.
Right.
So that means we have to pretty much be broke, right, to be able to get any help. But it says long-term care is not just an individual health issue, it's a structural driver of wealth inequality. What does that mean? It just means, well, a lot of wealthy families or wealthier families are able to do what we call self-insure. They can provide and have the assets if a long-term care situation does erupt or break out. Where the middle income families and the lower income families, if it happens, it devastates them financially, right? So it just widens the gap between those that have a lot of money and those that have worked hard and maybe don't have a lot. That's the problem, right? And that's why in a lot of countries around the world, it doesn't work like it does in our system, right? This is something you need to think about, right? Because realistically, it's going to happen to the bulk of us. I know I'm planning on it. And if you don't, it's going to backfire, right? Where's the money going to come from? Now, once you're broke, we would qualify to go on Medicaid, but I don't think many of us want that option either.
Yeah.
So again, there's some really cool hybrid life insurance products that can help solve this problem, but you got to be willing to talk to somebody and have some discussions and find out what your options are. Don't just leave it to chance.
That's really it, right? What are the options? And I think that's something where there's a lot of still kind of lack of education about the options for long-term care coverage and what can be done. Now, you mentioned a hybrid life insurance policy. That's probably a new thought for much of our audience, or perhaps you've heard something about it but are kind of unsure exactly what it means. Just to elaborate a little bit, I think most people are familiar with the idea that long-term care is something that you pay into monthly. You pay a monthly premium, and at some point in the future, that policy will pay for the needed long-term care that you have. Oftentimes, people feel that that's a very expensive burden to try and take on, potentially $1,000 a month or more. We see people paying these premiums for many years, but you know what? Mark, you always ask the question, expensive compared to what, right?
Exactly.
Because $1,000 a month per year for X amount of years is sure a lot less than $12,000 or $15,000 a month in a facility. So that's the first thing to consider. But the second, most of the time, the concerns that we see with those policies is that we pay into them and hopefully you never have to use them. And so let's say you don't actually use that long-term care policy. well, that money that you paid in is just kind of gone, right? The insurance company.
Use it or lose it.
Exactly. It's use it or lose it. And the insurance company keeps the money. So that's the biggest concern that folks have. But you mentioned a hybrid life policy. Can you expand more on what that means?
Yeah, you know, I had this conversation with my grandmother on my dad's side for a long time, and Grandma never bought any insurance. She did exactly what you said. She thought it was too expensive. It was never going to happen to them. And I said, okay, Grandma, but you have too much money to just avoid this discussion. But they didn't, and they rolled snake eyes. Grandpa gets Alzheimer's, and he ends up in a facility for a significant number of years. And so when that happened, like you said, she said, well, it's just way too much. I can't afford $6,000 a year. There's no way. Well, how can you afford $180,000 a year, right? It'll look like peanuts. See, and that's the point. But what's cool about what we're talking about, how cool would it be? And I think this would have, I could have probably got my grandma to buy into this one. If you don't use it and it doesn't happen to you, the death benefit is coming back to the children. And it's usually going to be, it's not a big percentage higher than your original deposit, but it's going to be more than what you put in. But if you have, let's say you put in $1, and then you've got $1.25 in death benefit, but here's the best part. What if the long-term care benefit is $4 and you put in only $1? See, that's what we're talking about. It's a way to leverage your investment for the maybe situation, but I hate to say it, but those that are viewing, that maybe situation is a very high likelihood that you're going to use some form of long-term care. So it's a really wonderful way to fix the problem, but here's the issue. If you wait too long and health becomes a problem, then you're not going to be able to clear underwriting. Then you can talk about this all you want, but you won't be able to qualify. So that'll end that discussion because that option goes away.
Right. And you know what we really see, and I think that this is the big thing, because from our perspective, it really comes back to quality of life in retirement. And so we see folks come in each and every day that are concerned about the future of long-term care as it pertains to their life, right? What that potential cost might be. And so we might have somebody who has $1 million retirement account, which is great. They've done a good job saving. And if it's not set up the right way, if that long-term care burden is not taken care of in their mind, what do people do? They don't spend the money that they have in their retirement plan. We see folks that have saved and saved. They've been good savers all these years, and they don't spend the money because there's a future unknown of what if and how much will that cost. Whereas the folks that have a solid written plan that accounts not only for the income that they need to live their life, but also helps to cover that long-term care concern, they actually have the confidence to go spend because they know that that what if has already been addressed. And that's one of the biggest things, because what that does is it gives folks that quality of life in retirement and that ability, the confidence to go spend and enjoy the time that they have.
You know, Fidelity was interesting. I was doing research for our shows, and Fidelity did a massive study that found that a lot of the 85-year-olds have 100% of what they started with still in the bank. What does that tell us? It tells us that they were so afraid that something was going to happen down the road that they didn't live the retirement that they dreamed of because they were doing exactly what you just said, Casey. They were afraid to spend the money because something devastating would happen and they would run out of money. But again, a plan is going to allow them. How many times do we talk with clients? One of our biggest challenges is they've been great savers, but helping them to believe that they can become great spenders, right? That's the challenge. But with a good plan, we show them mathematically why that is going to happen, and it's not going to be maybe. And then if you stress test this with some long-term care costs, you can almost guarantee a client. Now the plans are fluid, we know that, but we're going to be able to help them to realize, don't not do the things that you dreamed and wanted to do because you're so afraid of what could happen in the future. We want our clients to feel confident with clarity and independence to go live the life that they truly wanted to. Because at 85, we talk about the go-go years, but then the slow-go years are probably creeping in, if not the no-go years. And so when that happens, the money's not going to matter, is it? It just isn't.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's about having the money not only there for you, but at the right time in your retirement, right? That's the thing. And, you know, we talk about Social Security optimization and these kinds of things. Many people will think, well, I'm going to wait until 70. And that's great if you can do that. But just to illustrate the point that you highlighted, Mark, it's about when we receive the money. So if my maximum income is at my age 83, when life is probably slowing down a bit, that's really not the best way that it could have been done, right? So how do we design the right type of plan that gives somebody the confidence to go and enjoy it, to be independent, and to have clarity about what that retirement's supposed to look like? If you would like to have that for your specific situation, this is your opportunity. 844-342-7142. Pick up the phone, give us a call. Who you see here on the show is exactly who we are in the office. It's completely complimentary. There's no obligation. You leave your checkbook at home, and we will talk through a custom written plan just for you and what that needs to house to make sure that you can be comfortable and confident in your retirement. 844-342-7142. Don't change the channel. Come right back to Elevate Your Wealth.
Call 844-342-7142 for your own complimentary written financial plan with risk report. Why take unnecessary risk when you don't have to? At 65 years old, would you drive to the grocery store at 100 miles an hour if 40 miles an hour would get you there safely? When nearing retirement, are you still driving your investment accounts like you're in your 30s or 40s? Have you changed your investment elections since you first chose them in your retirement accounts at work? Call Casey, Mark, and the team at 844-342-7142 for your own investment risk report and written financial plan. Do you know exactly how much risk you're taking in your investment accounts? Now that you've accumulated a nest egg for retirement, you want to be certain the risk you're taking in those investments matches your goals and objectives. Call Mark, Casey, and their team at 844-342-7142 for your own complimentary risk report and written financial plan, or use the QR code below to begin scheduling your appointment. You may not have time to recover from taking too much risk.
Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. I'm your host, Casey Elkins, joined by my friend, father-in-law, and business partner, Mark Stimpson. We own a financial planning office right here in Seattle, Washington, called Elevated Financial Management. It is our mission to try and educate Seattle about what retirement looks like and what it should look like in your specific situation. We've been talking about long-term care. You know, something that I'd love to share with the audience real briefly is this book right here, Break the Glass. This is a book that, Mark, you and I wrote together a couple of years ago. We're actually making updates to it right now to share version 2 with our audience. And this goes into everything we talk about on the show. Long-term care, the risks that people are taking in their portfolios, the concern of future taxes. This is an opportunity for you to get a copy of the book, breaktheglassbook.com. If you go there, we'd love to share a copy with you. There's something interesting, Mark, that you and I were talking about during the break, and I'll just kick it off with this. A study from Edward Jones came up saying that 16% of Americans feel financially only 16% of Americans feel financially fulfilled, while 83%, about 216 million people, report financial stress, strain, or uncertainty in their life. How concerning is that when we sit around and look at financial retirement plans each and every day as we put these together? How concerning is that for our office?
It's very concerning. Those numbers, when you said that, Casey, it's staggering. 83%, they're concerned. They don't know what to do, right? And I got to say this, because if you're always going to be stressed about money, we know money's a big reason for a lot of divorce in America, the stress of debt. How many families and viewers are dealing with this right now? But if you can get your finances on some kind of level ground, I love the point that when we aren't financially stressed, it brought out this, says, what brings people joy is experiences, togetherness, and generosity, not accumulation.
That's exactly what I keyed in on, Mark.
I can't say enough about that statement right there. I want to read that again. What brings people joy is experiences, togetherness, and generosity, not accumulation. How many rich people do we know? They're some of the most unhappy people in the world, right? And so, again, money is not the the joy that a lot of people think it. Now, it can allow us to do certain things.
Sure.
We all know that, right? But I just think if we can get our financial life to where we've got some peace there, and help our clients to get rid of debt, to put together a plan. We know the ones that we have right now. We've got clients living all over the world that are so happy, and the pictures we're getting from Italy, from Thailand now, or different parts of the United States, Texas, New York. Well, I shouldn't say New York, I meant New Jersey, Minnesota,
Vegas,
all over. We got clients all
Mm-hmm.
over, right? But the point is, they're happy mainly because they've got income, that they don't have to. They're not financially stressing about where the check is coming from, and they got plenty of money to meet those expenses.
And I think that it really comes back to this. You mentioned what really brings people joy, right? And that was really what I keyed in on as we were looking at this together. There's something else here that I think is really worth sharing. The study says that fulfillment is about aligning your money with your values.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? I really do believe that the financial world as a whole has done many people a disservice, I should say, because it seems to always be about the maximum return, right? It's always about the maximum return. Now here, at the end of the day, I want folks to have as much money as they can have too. That's great, right?
Sure.
That's totally fine. But if that money does not truly serve a purpose in somebody's life, then what was the point in the first place? If that money doesn't allow you to go find those experiences and spend the time that you with people that you want to spend that time with, doing the things that you want to do, then there was really, truly no purpose behind it. But what gives that money, what gives the finances purpose in your life is a written plan that will help you not only feel confident, but give you the confidence to go spend that money in retirement. This is your opportunity, 844-342-7142. We will sit down with you, build a custom-tailored written financial plan, 844-342-7142. We'd love to see you around the office. Who you see here on the show is exactly who we are in the office. We're looking forward to meeting you, and we thank you so much for tuning in right here on Elevate Your Wealth. We'll see you again next week.